And it's Macabre, Derek here with Stereo-Rambling for once. Bringing a buddy of mine in on this. His name's Torna. He's involved himself in the VTMYTE new Sarum. For those of you who aren't in the know, VTMYTE, Vampire the Masquerade, YouTube experiments. Originally created by the Gentleman Gamer and has been reigning strong into its second season. So, to end up starting this off, I've been playing it from almost the start of season 2, in about a year and a half now. And Torna, how about you introduce yourself and tell us your experience in the venue for a second?
Well, hello. I've been playing, I think, VTME since January, and that's my role playing experience. Really, I kind of started in January and kind of went from there. I'm Aaron O'Connell. I play him, and yeah, I saw the Gentleman Gamers videos, and I was like, do you know what? I might as well give this a try. And I kind of looked up about new Sarum, and I found it, and went through a hell of a fucking character creation process because I didn't know next to nothing about anything. So the STs loved me, and yeah.
Well, any particular points when it ended up coming down to the character creation process? I mean, this was your first character, right? Like, you've never touched an RPG before this.
I kind of quickly went on to the now inactive subnet, which was a damn shame, but I kind of looked there and kind of just followed bullet points and went, okay, I'm just going with this, and we'll follow this, and we'll follow this. But no, the thing was, I think it's the first time you make your character seem invincible, and that's what I did. You know, he was fucking Superman, and the moment someone points it out to you, you realize how bad you are. You're like, oh god damn it, you know. So it's a definite experience to hear your first criticisms of your character that you make, because you think, oh, this guy's great, and then when someone points it out, you're like, actually, yeah, he is pretty stupid, you know. So
where did you get that initial idea that, like, you tried to build him as Superman? Where did that come from, if you don't
I
mind
think
me
it was
asking?
just like I chose Aaron as a clan gangrel, and I was just like, okay, he's a detective, but he's also a fucking gangrel, so I need to overcompensate, and I overcompensated so much. I was like, I have to make him good, and I have to make him good, and I think that's the problem. I think with a lot of people when they start out is that you want your character to be so good, but then that's the problem. You don't compensate their flaws then, and that's where I think I made my first mistake. I kind of just gave it all merits and no flaws, you know. And it's a harsh lesson you learn, but when you do, you laugh about it. Like when you first realize, like, Jesus Christ, you know. That's
Yeah,
how
but
I
now
felt.
that you've been taken down that route, and it
Mm.
has, like, what is the process ended up teaching you? Like, was it more beneficial now that you actually almost depowered him a little bit and started making him a little bit more rounded out?
Oh,
What
massively,
happened with him for that?
massively. I felt like the character really turned into himself, and I kind of gave a new lease of life that he has that vulnerability, and I really feel that like Aaron is so much more stronger character for it, that he's just not all muscle and all, you know, gun ho, that he has a lot of depth to him, and it teaches you depth, I think, to your character, and I think that's the biggest thing that I learned from that. It teaches you depth and perspective of it. Do you know?
Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, you'll end up hearing me shouting that from the rafters, right? About character flaws. It's a big one for me. And I'm wondering about that because, like I said, this was your first bit, right? But it was definitely wasn't your last. For those of you who may have been following, and this will probably be linked down below, Torna has joined me for a World of Darkness game, which is posted on this channel. In which case, I do believe that the mental scarring has remained.
Yeah. I remember that. That was a wild ride. That was something that I don't think I'll ever quite forget. I don't think, but Alex and I were, I don't think, ever really the same after that that World of Darkness game. Oh man. Oh.
So once you ended up coming there and you just started into the game, you kind of end up getting your feet wet, but you're one of the new players who came in, no role play experience. So what were you expecting when you first came in? Like,
I don't know. When I first came in, I had watched like the Gentleman Gamers, like the Ivory Wall stuff. So I'd seen him and John Burke do stuff, and I was like, okay, I can follow along with this. And I started watching stuff from New Sarum himself. And I was like, okay, and I started looking at characters, and I was thinking, how can my character interact with that, and what will I bring there? So what I was mainly thinking is that these people might have more experience than me, or some of them could be brand new. So I just watched a couple of videos and thought, okay, what can my character do to interact with these characters, and how can he gain off that and kind of feed off that, and what are these characters about? Do you know what I mean? I kind of did a study of certain characters, do you know?
Okay. So what were you finding when you were studying the characters that you were going to interact with through Aaron O'Connell, the gangrel detective that you play?
Um, I studied at first. I watched Axel, which was your character, and I noticed that he was more kind of the broker of information and kind of the focal point for neonates. It's like, okay, so I have to kind of get into that. You know, what can I do that makes myself useful? But at the same time, remind him that I'm the new big bad dog in the yard. You know, you have to constantly remind yourself of that. But how can I do it in such a way that that both of Axel and Aaron can benefit from each other? And I started looking at the likes of Zachary Voltaire at first when I started looking at it, and how can I
Now, for
play off
those
him?
who
You know.
aren't initiated, is not everybody ends up paying attention to what's been happening on the VTMYTE
Oh,
site. Would you mind describing Zachary Voltaire for a moment?
oh, Zachary Voltaire. Okay. Zachary Voltaire is a venture, and he is a businessman. But well, he's out of character. He's a very arrogant character. You know, he's very arrogant, and he's very opinionated. But he's also, I feel like that he sort of changes every 5 minutes. It's that I am this and this, but I'm the redeemer and I'm this. But it's almost like he never does favors for you. You do favors for him, but then he wonders why then you will not go to him, because at the end of the day, you're just going to be owing him more favors, and he's never going to help you in the long run. That's what I feel anyway. That in terms of, it's not a surprise that but he's a very good villain. I find he's a very good counterpoint. That he's almost like that a perfect asshole that you meet in work. You know, you're never gonna like him, but he tries to like you, and then he's wondering why you don't like him. You know, he's that perfect asshole, and I love that fact about him, that he's that asshole that you're just not gonna like. But that's fine. You know, it fits so well. Christopher plays it very well. You know.
So, okay, you're here saying you were here bringing him, and then you said you were studying Axel, the character I play, and you were studying Zachary Voltaire. And you said, what can I end up bringing to the table in this case? Now,
Yeah.
you are, again, like this is your first character, and this is what you were here looking at bringing. But what made you end up thinking about these relationships with this character in mind? Like, is there any particular touchstones you do specifically to keep Aaron's opinions, Aaron's, and trying to keep that in character, out of character line as
Yeah,
separate as possible?
I think that's the biggest thing, because oh yeah, definitely that's the biggest thing, because you have to kind of learn. Like, Aaron is a very stubborn, and he's very rude, and he's very arrogant, and he's very kind of just self-assured and full of confidence. I'm not out of character. I'm quite easy. You know?
Oh,
So I'm quite easygoing, so it's kind of very easy for me to slip out of that Aaron mindset and just go back to my normal. I like everybody, everything's cool. You know, it's kind of, it's very. You just got to remember that it's just a game, and the thing I enjoy is that after a scene, you can talk to the people, and it's that transference of you from a character back to normal. Like, we can both mind fuck each other in terms of a scene, but then afterwards we're like, oh, that was great. You know, that's what I enjoy. You know.
um, speaking on that note, like bit of mind fuckery, you know, a little player versus player, and you know, everybody trying to get one-upsmanship. You know, what was your experience, or what was one of the things that was your biggest hurdle as a new player, like first coming in? This is your first role-playing game, you know, you've never done anything, and then all of a sudden somebody ends up giving you the idea. Not only would it be great for you to end up playing in a game, in a RPG, but we're going to end up throwing you amongst dozens, if not at one point over 100 players with 5 STs, and by the way, you've got to be on camera, and all these complications. Like, what were some of the trip ups that were happening with that?
Oh, I think the first scene I ever did with John Burke, I was so nervous, and I think that was mainly it was nerves because I'd watched this guy and he was like this big, bombastic storyteller with loads of interesting stories, and I'm like, here's me, this new guy who knows next to nothing about anything, and I'm like, hi, it was. I think it's for me, like I did acting before, so I think the getting on camera and switching into personalities, it wasn't that much of an issue, but I think it was nerves really. And the fact I didn't know much about the rules, I think with dice rolls, because like I would have to stop and go, am I rolling the right dice and stuff in the first couple of videos because I had no clue, am I doing this right? So, and a lot of the scenes I would just wing it just to make sure while I was reading the rules quickly while the STs weren't looking. It was an interesting thing because I think it was just the amount of rules that you kind of have to know and kind of have to keep in mind when you're doing a scene. And I think that would be my only trip up, is this just myself. It's like there's a lot to keep up with, but otherwise than that, not a lot. I think the hurdle was my own kind of self confidence with it. It's very hard to get in front of it's kind of very hard to you know be this big forefront, and like particularly my first open scene, that was jarring. I didn't know what to do, where to go. It's like you can go follow him if you want, and it's like, but it's kind of, I'm still standing here, and it's, I don't know what to do.
And one of the things, just to clarify, right, an open scene in this venue is that literally anybody can join at any given time. It could be a storyteller, it could be a whole bunch of players. Sometimes you might get like just 10 players and no ST, no storyteller, no person directing the action. And you got to end up figuring out, okay, what am I going to do? And when you got that many people, and everybody wants their screen time, everybody wants that spotlight, you kind of got to fish for it. You got to end up stepping up a bit. But on the other hand, you don't want to dominate the entire thing, as I so frequently do, which is a terrible thing on me. I got to end up learning to shut that shit down on occasion. But, you'll end up finding your pace. So after you've gained a little bit of experience in New Sarum, like, I know you've been in several other one-shots and smaller games and going off to the side. Like, what was your experience there? What were the games that you've joined so far?
I did your game, the World of Darkness thing. I'm doing San Diego by Night thing, and sort of New Vegas post-apocalyptic type stuff. I've done a lot. We've done a couple of improvised kind of 5-minute ST things. We've just done a lot, and it's kind of a lot of role playing and a lot of fun. Really, it's kind of just making these characters, seeing where you go, and I've made new characters. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting the hang of this. I think once you've got past that hurdle of, okay, your first character's done this, it's kind of okay. I'm going to try again and see where we go. And it's more kind of a learning curve. I think that you try different characters, some work out as much as you plan, some don't. I think the more you do, you just get more kind of familiar with it. But each time it just gets better and better, I find.
There's something to be said about it. Hey, a rapid iteration, right? To fill you in, there's a game that we all end up playing. It's called the 5-minute ST. Basically, you don't know you're about to end up entering into a game, and try and imagine you have 5 minutes to figure out a game. And it's not designed to be good or epic. It's not designed to be, oh my God, like this is going to be a great epic bit. The entire idea is just throw an idea at the wall, have some fun with the characters, and expect to fall on your face. It gets rid of those first-time jitters. And it's really there to help you not be worried about making a mistake, which if you're anything like me, that's all you're worried about. And I know
I got a lesson learned that way with 5-minute ST. I think we were all sitting there, and next thing you know, Derek just claps his hands and goes, "All right, Turner, you're ST." And I was just like looking down at something like, "Wait, what?" It's kind of this. You don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, and then you're like, all these guys have just popped characters in front of you, and you're like, I have. You spend 2 minutes thinking, what the fuck am I gonna do? And then the other 3 minutes go, okay, let's just think of anything. Come on, just anything.
But valuable learning tool, I think. Especially for you, is like I said, you're And I hate to reiterate that whole newness, but that really needs to be brought out because, at least in the games I've played, you've been one of the more dominant players. You've been bringing up the bar every single time. And this is kind of to show, like, just because a person doesn't have a lot of experience in role-playing itself doesn't mean that, oh, well, I better take the person who's done like 7 or 8. I can tell you right now, I've experienced several players, myself included, who've been at this for more than a decade and still cannot hang with some of the newer players who come in and they just come into character and they just go with it. I've made mention of a buddy of mine, Tom, you've met.
Tom is great. Thomas Ronan Blackmore is something else. It's wow. It's oh man.
And there's been, like he started 3 years ago, and he's touched on a few things. But what happened with him is that he started and got shy, pulled back away from the hobby. But then all of a sudden came back with it, and instead of worrying about, oh, am I doing this right? No, am I not powerful enough? He just started building psychologies. And once he started building psychologies, even if it was just that, I'm gonna kick somebody's ass, it was still a strong individual. It didn't feel like he was just sitting there because, he's got an 11 dice pool, which Ronan doesn't. He wish he had. But
in Ronan's mind, he has.
Yeah. In Ronan's mind, he's got a 20 in strength brawl, and he automatically does lethal damage, and he goes past fortitude. Fortitude will not save you from Ronan fucking Blackmore.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the biggest thing, which helped me gel more, is that I did a scene with Rasmus, who plays Aloysius Grant, and his character, my character, have a really kind of close friendship. But the both of us are very new, so I think the first big plot that was on was this 3-headed dog plot, and
which you jumped on my kitchen, I might add.
Yeah, but that was a great scene where Aaron and Aloysius turned up to Axel's fucking a bar with a 3-headed dog carcass. That was great. But the thing was, Taraz and I, we were so enamored with what was going on. Like, there was this big Sabbat plot going on at the time, and we were so hyped that we were involved in a plot that had an ST that we were like, you know what? We're gonna make this plot the most important plot of our characters' lives. Fuck Serena Gonzalez in the Sabbat. Aaron and Al have just taken out a 3-headed bloody dog. You know what I mean? And we were so enthusiastic about it that we just decided, you know what, these characters have never seen shit like this before. And I think that sometimes gets lost on people, that you are dealing with horror and you are dealing with like people's flesh being rendered. So for these two characters, one of them's a detective and one of them's a psychiatrist, seeing a 3-headed dog jump out at them, we just decided, you know what, these guys are going to be flipping the fuck out, and would go to Axel going, have you seen this? Because we've never seen this. We don't know what this is. Is this a thing? You know what I mean? Is this something that we do? Because otherwise, I got nothing for you. And I think that benefited it so much, like, that we managed to take a plot, and the STs were just looking at us going, these two are just so enthusiastic, we're going to just expand on this. And that was great. It was great for all, like, it was great because it just showed us that if you put in that time and you put in that work, that you will get rewarded eventually. If you want your character to do well, then you put in that work to make it do well,
Yeah, and I think that's something that's often lost, especially with age. And this is, I gotta end up saying, this is probably the thing I do notice amongst a lot of players who've spent a lot of time in role-playing games, and it's kind of a shame when you think about it, because they assume this kind of shit's going to happen. They treat this as the norm. And unfortunately, the problem, I think Alex said it best. You become afraid when you are pretending to be afraid as the character. You start feeling what they feel. And when that happens, it brings that immersion up quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's lost too frequently when another player, like, how many times can I be afraid of something with fangs when I'm playing, when I've been playing Vampire for, say 4 or 5 years, far less a decade. Same idea with Dungeons and Dragons, you end up running into Bugbear. Well, how am I supposed to be afraid of this thing? An orc? Oh, okay, well, aren't those meat fodder? A whole bunch of goblins, kobolds, ooze, You know, that tar pit that's trying to eat you. You know, how am I supposed to be afraid of that? Well, I can imagine a few ways.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a thing that you kind of forget about. That you're like, oh yeah, no, I can pop claws, I'm fine. You know, that sometimes can enter into your mind. But then the thing is, it's like, I think that my first scene where I went into the Sabat Haven up in Morgan's Grove during that plot, and literally the ST described it as the walls are turning inside out, and it's like a flesh crafted pit. So it's like, I was thinking there is no way I would be cool with this, and I think that's what you have to do. I think as a character, but what I found anyway, and when I started, is that you have to imagine that you are this, you know, person who's new to all these things if you're playing a neonate, and you're basically seeing hell itself reimagined itself in this little guy's fingertips. So you would genuinely, any normal modicum of a human reaction would be like, holy fucking shit, what is this? Do you know what I mean? What have I walked into? You know, it's kind of, it just, it has, like, I think common sense dictates a lot in role playing, not just like as a merit that you can get, but as more kind of your character would react a certain way to this. There's no way you could just pass it off nonchalantly, and I think that's such a key thing. I think I found that makes it just easy to slip into mindsets of characters. You know.
And it doesn't even need to be with the mindfuckery of, oh my god, the walls are breathing. You know, like it could be the small things too. You know, it can be those character points where it's two characters trying to figure each other out, and you know, who's the bigger dog here. I know you and me have had several interactions between Aaron and Axel, and those are things that I find that really end up bringing the game up a notch. So here's just a quick thought here. With yourself, what have been some of the best things that you've learned to do to end up helping building up these characters?
Oh, there's so many. I love characters who can do the facial animations, the kind of twitches, the turns. I love that, and I love integrating into that with characters. I love that. I think that adds so much more if you can do like certain movements with your camera. You don't even have to move the camera. If you can move your like face, you can move your face a certain way. If you have a character's particular tick, like he clicks his fingers at things, or he bites his lip, or his tongue kind of comes out. And I love that fact with players who bring that. I love that because you can feed off it. You can feel that. It's all like if you use your facial features and you use that, I think it's great. The camera work, and Derek, you do that the whole time, and I love it because it adds tension, it adds a sort of atmosphere to it, and you can integrate it. I think if you come alive when you're doing it, you don't just sit there kind of up in the background. You kind of, if you can lean in front of the camera, or like, you know, there's a particular scene where you and I did where both our characters pulled each other up face to face, and you and I both lunged forward in front of the camera, you know, like that. So it adds so much more.
Well, there's something to be said about this kind of tension, right? There's this closeness. It makes it almost like, you know, I'm about to grab the edges of the screen and start popping out. But here's the thing, right? That just as a more veteran player, and I don't mean that as a lofty pedestal, I assure you, if you want to end up knowing the sad truth that no expert player really wants to admit, here's where the new guy is. Your 10-year veteran is that much higher. Right? Time does not equate skill. You know, skill is something that you bring forward by going at it and doing it. And I can guarantee you the same things that you were talking about work just as well when you're sitting around a table in the living room with a bunch of your buddies, or maybe you're out in a bar and you're doing a bit of LARPing. Either way, it's, you know, your actions. And you've seen me, hell, my hands don't stop moving when I start talking. And that's because I'm fairly animated when I start get going. Like, that's proper English, right?
Yeah. But like, even it's great to see players grow as well. Like, it's great to see them kind of start out a bit nervous and then kind of evolve as well. Like Rasmus in particular, like Rasmus and I would have done a lot of scenes together when he first kind of started out doing scenes with me. He would be a lot more nervous than I would be, but seeing him evolve and seeing him just bring it to the table time and time again, and just evolve that character, evolve that concept. But he sits there, and I think the biggest thing, and it's hard for people, and that's the thing, is that it's only criticism. It's constructive. It's okay to admit that you've done something wrong, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like, if you make a mistake, it's fine. You know, we all do it. We all fuck up in scenes. We all make a fucking bad dice roll. And like, I'm guilty as well of doing that. You feel like shit. You're like, oh god damn it, and oh fuck. But it's okay. Like, it's okay to go, you know what? I fucked up. It's all right. Take a few minutes, go get cups of coffee, you know, just or play some fucking heavy metal or some shit like that. You know, power it out. But come back then, and then just think about it for a few minutes, and it's fine. It's okay to admit that your character has made mistakes, that you may have not been doing something right. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that there can be no growth without you realizing what you're doing. And I think as long as the criticism is constructive, it's an open playground for you. You know, that's what I found anyway.
And one of the things that I end up finding personally is that the screw-ups tend to be actually more interesting than if things went right. Not at the time. At the time, you're completely panicking, like, oh my god. Like, I tried to end up carving her eyes out so she stopped end up using that penance stare ability. Instead, I accidentally carved into the gray matter. Now I'm on the phone trying to end up calling up people to end up getting rid of the body and going, yeah, everything's fine. Oh god, I think our next step.
Yeah, that's very reminiscent in the scene you or I involved in, where Aaron O'Connell, this was golden. Aaron O'Connell decided, you know what? Axel's been attacked by this weird tongue asp lady thing, and he goes, you know what? I'm just gonna claw her eyes out. Fuck it. And he does quite successfully, I might add. But then he realizes the bitch has no eyes. So she is nearly dead. She ends up dying, and Aaron has to call his sire while reassuring his sire on the phone that the person's alive. He's tapping her body and there's no movement. You know, there's no nothing. And I think after the scene, I felt like total crap. It was like, oh my god, what did I do? But when I came back, it was hilarious. It was like, this is just such a glorious clusterfuck of a scene. How can I not enjoy it? You know, it was so good. And seeing how the characters had to react, like, the very next scene, Axel and Aaron owe Meyer Boone, and it's like, why do they owe a boon? And then you just do the internal sigh from both characters going, well, somebody had to get a bit enthusiastic, and that banter is great. And that seeing how your character can come back or try to come back, or if it's time to go, it's time to go. And but seeing how that character leaves or recovers is fucking wonderful. I think that's the best part of it. It's just seeing how your character reacts to this fucking crazy shit. I think that's the most enjoyable bit, is when it goes wrong, it goes wrong. But then the fallout is so much more entertaining, because you just have to deal with it like time and time and again, you know?
Yeah, and speaking from experience, I'll say it right now, that same thing happens with STs all the time, right? It's like, I had this intricately woven plot line, and then, well, I didn't see that coming. How am I going to deal with this shit now? You got to start winging it. You got to start figuring out, okay, what is this character that I'm supposed to be playing? What is this NPC thinking? What's their aims? What are they going to do? Are they the type to be merciful and help out a bunch of inexperienced kindred? Or is this a type that says, oh, I'm going to press you for boons? Or is this the person who says, no, we're going hard and fast to the rules, and you broke the masquerade, so you need to die, son?
You got it. You know, it's like, what's happening? You know,
yeah, you can be only thankful if it turns out the person that came over is a fucking cleaner and is willing to eat the body with you. Another side story to the same one we were referencing, but that, putting that aside for a moment, you end up having these moments where, you know, it is a clusterfuck, but you need, I think the best part about it is that after the scene, out of character, when you're talking with your buddies, you can end up talking about these stories and describe them as, you know, like, oh my god, you had to have been there. There's no way, no matter how much I tell you about it, you will understand how gloriously screwed we were. Right?
Like, you had Lewis the ST, who was just going, how is this going wrong? And you're like, I don't know, I just wanted to go and follow the woman, you know? And I think that interaction of the four of us in that scene just laughing about how fucked this scene is, I think is the best bit, because it just makes you just want to play more, and you're just like, this is great. But lately I've discovered the benefit of politicking in Vampire, and I'm loving it. I'm loving playing the politicking, and it's something that I've just discovered a new love for. That it's like, the clusterfuck scenes are great, full of action, full of intrigue, they're fun, But then again, it's always nice to be that, you know, the little finger in Vampire. You know, it's always nice to be the Varys from Game of Thrones. It's always nice to be the guy like Clay Davis from The Wire. It's always nice to be these manipulators because you get this feeling of ooh, I'm bad. You know what I mean? You know, it's ooh, you know, it's great. I think it's a new area I've just really gotten into lately.
And I'm glad you are, because I think that's something that a lot of newer players hesitate to get involved in. They're very much, especially if you come from a game background, right? Like if you're used to RPGs and you're thinking your Final Fantasies, you're thinking your Mass Effects, Witcher, whatever, right? And that's how you interpret role play. You're used to the idea of, okay, we're going to get into combat and we're going to end up going in, I'm going to run the fucking gambit and we'll let come what may. But you know, there's some people will treat these as two separate games, like the politicking versus the combat. And this is particularly prevalent in games like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, I find, where they almost treat the politics and all this as a cutscene and just waiting to get to the next fight, rather than realizing that if you dive in at that point, there is so much more to explore. There is so much you can build upon because of it. And I think you're just discovering that now. So any particular things you'd care to end up sharing to a newer player, like if there was somebody who was just coming into, say, Vampire, or maybe playing Dungeons and Dragons and finally having to go to court with the king and the prince and all this kind of stuff, what would you say to them?
I think when you're starting out in the politics is the best thing to do, and as long as you keep it out of character in character, that's fine. But study the person you're doing a scene with. Study that. No, and think of it in terms of your character. What can your character gain? What can he lose? What's best case scenario? What's worst case scenario? And then sometimes when you see an opening, don't be afraid to take it, because I learned that with this character Emerson, and I took the opening and it paid off. It could have backfired in my face, but then again, learn to just go, you know what? I'm going to try it. And it mightn't work. You might get slapped down, or you might get something out of it. Learn to take that inkling, you know, trust your character, you know, trust yourself and trust your character, and go for it. And that's the best thing. Don't bull rush and try to blitzkrieg your way through it. Play it smart, but play it subtly. But at the same time, don't hesitate. And that's the biggest thing I think with new players, is that with the politicking, they're so afraid of it all going wrong that they don't realize that it's not. They kind of overhype themselves and they think, oh, if I do this, this is going to happen. When in reality, if you look at the scenario, study it, it's nowhere near as bad. It's actually, you're probably in a worse off position for not going and trying it. You know, I think that's the thing. Don't hesitate with it, but play it smart. You know.
And there's oftentimes I run into this because there's a lot of players I've found that have an issue when it comes down to politics. And I will say it right now, there's a lot of STs I would not trust with politics, mostly because they do think in terms of the meat grinder, as it were. So when you end up having these moments where, hey, you want to know what? I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. You know, like I've built a bard that's a social climber. That needs to be in your ST, your GM, your DM, or your flame tender's head. And too often than not, these players who aren't used to this politicking haven't really stopped and fleshing out. And if you can't do politicking well, oftentimes I find that's a symptom of a very quickly made NPC that really hasn't been fleshed out for having its own goals, its own agenda. Because that's what it is in politics, right? You have your agenda. You want to end up making sure that you come out on top. How do you make this situation better for yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It's like, how am I going to qui bono? Who? What do I get? You know, and I think what Aaron is kind of qui gives a shit. I think is Aaron's mentality. He's getting his, and that's. Think of it from your character's perspective. Like, think of it like if you're playing a manipulator, play that role, run with it, but always have a fallback. Always make sure your character, he's getting in, but have it in a way that only your character would know how to work it, how to work the angles, how to click in that mentality. And if you can't play the politics, if you're a physical guy, if your guy's like, say, a bruiser, you know, a thug, you can play the politics, but play it to him. Don't suddenly become the fucking Machiavelli of, you know, of it, you know. Play it to, how does a thug deal with a low-level subordinate, but keeps in the rest of his boys in line. You know, think of it that way. Think of the character you're playing. I think that's the biggest thing. Think of your character. Like, that's
And I
where
think I think one of the issues that often also comes up is that everybody wants to win, right? But if you build a character in a particular way, there's going to be clear-cut places where it's like, this is going to go wrong if this character tries it. That's just by in nature of the character, especially if it's played well. It's going to have those hang-ups. And you could try and play well in every single bit, but, you know, there's even... This is almost playing to that idea that well-rounded characters have this innate advantage that they can jump into different situations and at least have an angle to work with versus the character who is like, say, like you discussed, full-on bruiser, big guy. If he gets tossed into any kind of court, be it the knightly court, kingly court, court of vampires, or even a court of law, he's going to lose, you know? That's might be a portion of his story. That is telling a part of this character's story as strongly as it is his victories. And I think too many people are worried about, are they going to end up screwing up versus, you know, this might be the way the character ends, but now all of a sudden we know why these kinds of characters typically work out this way. You have a chance to understand that mentality. And that comes from playing the characters with that very strong need to be in character, to understand the mentality, to build that personality, and then push it forward onto other players, other people, other NPCs, and then have it come back to you in that almost echo chamber that happens. Well, it's not quite an echo chamber, but you understand, like give and take starts building it up, and that's where you end up getting some of the best games, is when people are playing off of what each other are doing.
Oh yeah, I think that's the best bit. I think when you have a guy who you're doing a scene with, and then suddenly out of nowhere the guy interacts and you just run with it. I think that's been the most fun scenes for me, is that when you just get a guy who's just gonna go, you know what, man, go for it, and you two just know what's gonna happen, you know what's gonna play out, but then you change it up a bit. I think if you get a player or an ST who wants to do that with you, who's just going, all right, bars open, go for it, you know. And I think that's the thing, is I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed where I get the most enjoyment out of the scenes, is that when that interaction is there for you to have, whether it be it physical mindfuckery or just simple, you know, subterfuge. Like, and also I think I would say is, you're in Vampire, if you're playing Vampire, you know, in terms of politics, you're gonna get played. You know, I think that's one of the things you have to learn. I think particularly with Vampire and New Sarum, you're gonna get played a lot. You know, I learned that the hard way with Aaron. You're gonna get played. You're gonna get manipulated, but run with it. You knew this was gonna happen. You're the bottom peg. You're the bottom of the barrel. You're an neonate. You're dealing with these guys who've been around for 100, 150 years or more upwards. They know the score. You don't. You're gonna get played, but get played in such a way that at the end of the day, you're the one who's dipped through the mud. Or if you sink, you sink. But if you come up, you can show that how that character came up and how that character has changed from this like green-faced neonate. Or if you go down and you sink down to a monster or you die, you can show how that character was and how that character became. And that arc, it's the arc. I think that's the big bit that people miss out on. It's telling a story. I think it's not about winning. I think in my mind, winning is that a redeemable character, like maybe he doesn't redeem himself. Maybe that's the tragic point. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe the thief always wants to go back and steal, or the drug addict always goes back to drugs. But if it redeems, he redeems. But if he doesn't, it doesn't. And I think it's the story that gets lost on people. I think it's, what is the story? You know, I think that's an area I find anyway.
Yeah, and I've always been an advocate of, it is the players who tell the story. The ST is simply there to be the world they're in, right? But it's always up to the player to end up choosing, what kind of story are you trying to tell? What is it that you want to end up doing? Are you the person who has these morals and are completely unshakable in them? You will not budge? Or is this the kind of person who maybe is a little bit more cowardice and, in order not to hurt, starts bending a little bit and starts realizing he's going down a slippery slope, and eventually starts devolving to the point where he overcomes his cowardice, but in doing so has become this monster.
Yeah,
you know,
I
Both
think you find.
both
I
are
think,
stories to tell, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's good. That's good shit. You know, no matter what it is, if your character becomes a villain, he becomes a villain. And run with it. Have fun with that. You're a fucking villain. You go for it. If your character's the anti-hero, you're the anti-hero. If you're the good guy, you're the good guy. But have fun. Have fun with that. You know, like I think what was it I sent you before when Axel became on, like your character went on the path of Lilith, and I sent you the video of Scar from the Lion King, like, doing these meticulous plans and stuff, and I was like, have fun with it, man, because you are that guy now. You are the arch manipulator. And I was like, have fun with that. Go, you know what, it's, I know I'm not the winner of this story, but damn it, I'm gonna have fun with this. You know what I mean? God damn, I'm gonna just go with this. You know, you want an arch manipulator, you got it, man. And I love that. I love that fact. If a player runs with something and they have fun, I think it's so much more enjoyable for everybody else as well, because it shows, yeah, it's shit, but at the same time, hey, it's just, you know, it's just a game. You know, I'm gonna just run with this, and I think that's the biggest thing for me is, as long as you're enjoying yourself, then you're fine. You're golden. You know, as long as you're having fun. You know, I think
Yeah.
that's the worry for most new players, anyway.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is, and it can be quite a hang-up for a lot of people to get through. Okay, I'm going to end up wrapping this up right here, but actually, you know what? Even better. Torna, take as long as you need. New player comes up to you. Never played an RPG in his life, has no idea what the hell he's doing. 3 pieces of advice and why.
Okay.
Go.
First piece, first big fucking thing. Use the camera, use yourself, use your body movements, use that, use your eyes. You know, the eyes are a big bit. If you can get a twitch in your eye or a blink or a cocking of your head, big thing. It personifies your character, gives your character personality, gives that oomph, you know, that kind of the juju, you would call it. You know, it gives that pow to it. Second thing, don't be afraid in a big scene or even in just a one-on-one scene. Don't be afraid to just, before the scene starts, just let the player know, okay, I'm running with this. What do you think? Discuss it with each other. Run with it. Coexist off each other. Coexist off your ST. Chat to your ST. They're only human. They're not going to bite your head off. They're there to help you. You're there to do everything. Don't be afraid of that. That's a big thing. Don't be afraid of that. Third thing, and this is probably the biggest thing, if it goes to shit, it goes to shit. There's nothing you can do. And if you made the mistake, you made the mistake. If you succeed, revel in it. If your character doesn't fail, he fails and he does this and he does that. But just have fun with that. You know, don't. And I'm not going to lie, you get hung up, feel shitty, you feel like, oh, goddamn. But at the end of the day, take 5 minutes, go get coffee, go get stuff. Even if you need to take a week, if you feel bad, take that week, come back, and just relook at it. It's not as bad. It's not as bad as you think. And there's always the option when your character dies, you can make a new one. You can do these things. It's just a game, you know. And that would be my advice. You know, don't be afraid. Run with it. Learn the rules, even though there's a lot of them. But just don't be afraid and have fun. Have fun is the main thing. Just have fun with that, you know, and grow with that, you know.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Torna, for dropping by and having this little bit of a stereo ramble with me.
Oh, you're grand. You're grand.
All right. If you ended up finding this helpful, end up pressing the like button. If you want to end up seeing more of these kinds of videos, more rambling portions of wisdom coming from the mind of Derek and his associates, feel free to hit subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything you want to see discussed, make a note over in the comments. I'm keeping an eye on them. Until next time.